My name is Kathy, and I'm going to be your moderator, as I said. Our timekeeper tonight is Sue, and she's right there waving the cards. Thank you, Sue. Our other volunteers assisting this evening are Mary, Lindsay, Evan, and Zenaida. If you could just sort of wave and let's say thank you. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and the many Indigenous people of this region. The three long-standing Indigenous groups of this region are the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Lenapehoik. I apologize for that. I'd also like to recognize the three First Nations communities neighboring the City of London: Chippewas of the First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and the Munsee Delaware Nation. We recognize that we, as the Urban League members and community, have a role to play in relationship building and reconciliation, and that reconciliation has to be about more than talk. It has to be based on action. Miigwech. The Urban League of London is hosting all candidates' meetings with partner organizations from across London, including ANOVA, Climate Action London, Inclusive Economy London and Region, London Cycle Link, London Environmental Network, London Intercommunity Health Centre, London School of Racialized Leaders, London Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership, Pillar Nonprofit Network, and Young London. We are hosting 14 meetings throughout London before the municipal elections scheduled for October 24th. A volunteer-run committee was struck by the Urban League of London and has been meeting since January to organize these meetings. The committee is composed of individuals from various organizations across the city and set the goal of encouraging participation in local government and the political process. The committee has invited all candidates to participate. Along with the partner organizations, the committee also created a list of important questions to ask the candidates. We request that everyone here today be respectful of the candidates and your fellow audience members. We would also like to encourage those of you in our audience who use social media to tag the Urban League in their posts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either @Urban League of London or @ULLDN, and maybe use the hashtag LDN votes. We would especially like to thank the Westmount Public School for their support in providing this meeting space. And we also thank the London Community Foundation for sponsoring the all-candidate meetings and remind our audience of their 2021 release of the Vital Signs Report, Be the Change. Vital Signs is a biannual check-in on how we are faring on issues that are significant to the well-being and quality of life. The latest report focuses on making systemic change by coming together to participate in collective action. If you're looking for that report, it's at bethechangelondon.ca. And thank you to Rogers for their support for this evening and filming the event, and these will be broadcast on television. So I'll explain the ground rules that we're going to follow. I will draw the candidates' names from an envelope to determine the speaking order. Each candidate has 2 minutes for an opening introduction. Our first candidate will draw from the box a question from one of the long list that they have already been given. This is followed by the remaining candidates who will have 1 minute for rebuttal. This will continue until each candidate has had a chance to draw at least one question. Candidates, please make sure to speak clearly into the microphones, and you're able to remove them from the stands if you need to. Once every candidate has completed a question from the box, we will then select questions provided by the audience. And we have a few questions that were sent in. We will go through those first, and then if we still have time, we will go to the audience for questions there. Once we've exhausted all the questions, we may, depending on time, go back to the box, or that might be the end of the meeting. How the timekeeping works. The timekeeper has 3 cards: a green card, a yellow card, and a red card. When your allotted time begins, the green card will be held up. At the 30-second point from the end time, the yellow card is held up. The red card is held when you must immediately end your answer. As moderator, my job is to move the night along and ensure that each candidate is treated fairly and has the same amount of time as the other. All candidates were provided with the questions in advance of the meetings to afford them the opportunity to prepare their responses. I will read the questions as they are drawn. Before we would begin, I do want to acknowledge, are there any other school board candidates here? I do have Eric Vallely. Are there any others that are running? Okay, so check out Eric. I believe he's got some information, or ask him some questions at the end of the evening. Thank you for running. Okay, we're going to draw names from the envelope now. We, meaning me. That's the royal we. Are we still allowed to say that? That name, she's not here. The first question will be drawn by Michael McMullen. Oh, sorry, the first introductory speech. Michael, you will go first. Second will be Paul Van Meerbergen. You're so tiny. Third will be John Kuipers. And fourth will be Kevin May. So Michael, would you like to begin?
Sure. Testing, can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Hi everyone, and thank you for coming tonight to this very important conversation. And thanks to the facilitators and the timekeepers and everybody who made this possible. I'd like to introduce myself first. My name is Mike McMullen. I ran federally twice for the People's Party of Canada, and I also ran provincially for the Freedom Party of Canada. And then I've decided to throw my hat into the ring municipally for City Council. I've served in the military. I was a truck driver for 10 years. I was also in the supplemental reserves, and I made it to the rank of Master Corporal. I was born and raised in London. I grew up in the East End, and we thought things were bad in the East End back then. But a lot of this poverty and homelessness and drug addiction and all this stuff is not simply confined to the East End anymore, and it's moving up to our end of the city. So one of the things that I want to do is to get a grasp on what's going on and deal with the poverty and homelessness and the mental illness situation that seems to be skyrocketing in London. But thank you once again for coming out, and I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Paul Van Meerbergen.
Mike, or is it Michael? Michael?
Michael.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, and thank you, Michael. My name is Paul Van Meerbergen, and before I begin, I'd like to thank the organizers, of course, yourselves for coming tonight. It's very important to attend these things, these meetings. And I'd just like to thank the candidates themselves for stepping forward and taking part in the democratic process. That's what makes our democracy lively, and that's what keeps it healthy. So congratulations to all of you. So my name again is Paul Van Meerbergen. Sometimes you have to repeat it. It's a little long. My lawn signs and my large signs are more expensive than others because I pay by the letter. So it's just one of those things. I've been on City Council for 15 years. I'm also in charge of business development at a company here in London. It's a manufacturer and exporter called Lamco Tool and Mold down by the 401. We export everything we produce. It goes to the United States and Mexico. Through that experience, I see on a daily basis what not only businesses have to go through, but also your regular working people that are out making a living for themselves and their families. So I consider that to be certainly a positive. This campaign, and I've heard this very much from the public and from constituents, is about invigorating the housing sector, improving roads, controlling crime and personal security, and lowering property taxes, keeping an eye on the ever-present property tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Kuipers.
I'm John Kuipers. Is that working okay? I've been a change agent my whole career, and change for the better. I worked as a marketing executive, and I helped change consumer behavior. I changed TD Bank, the Treasury Group, where I helped them become customer-driven. As a leadership coach and an author of 4 books, I've helped thousands of people make personal change. And I've sat on 8 nonprofit boards like the United Way and Toronto City Mission. And now I want to change London for the better. And you might ask why. Well, the need is great, and the potential, I believe, in this city is enormous. What I've seen in the world of change is that most of us only change when we feel enough pain. And many of us are like a frog in a pot of water that's slowly boiling. And London is expected to boil over with 100,000 new residents in the next 10 to 15 years. And that means for us 50,000 new homes, 60,000 new jobs, 90,000 new cars. And the question I ask is, are we ready? And from what I see, I think we're not. My research shows a city council that is on autopilot. They've approved multi-year budgets, and they have a London plan, 500-page London plan that seriously lacks an evidence-based foundation. Council itself processes 86 motions on average every meeting. That's 1 every 2.5 minutes, and 99% of them are passed. Their agendas are flushed with issues that should never be on the table. I looked at 3 City of Hamilton Council meetings, and that's from this past spring, they do about 1/3 the number of motions and spend 4 times as long on each motion. And that's what we need here. We need a few well thought out big priorities. I think we can do a lot better, London, and I want to help make it happen. So on October 24th, I'm asking Ward 10 to vote for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin May.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you to our hosts, the Urban League of London. Thank you to Rogers TV for broadcasting. But most importantly, thank you all for being here and those watching at home. It's exciting to see engagement in Ward 10 again. I've knocked on thousands of doors, talked to many members of the community. There are different perspectives, different opinions on what issues matter most, but ultimately we're all here for the same reason. We want London to be better. We all want more affordable housing. We all want more reliable transit. We want safer streets for our infrastructure, for our kids. And we want better accessibility, and we want more support for those most vulnerable, including the 3,000 people that are experiencing homelessness in our community right now. I've had conversations about these issues and more, but one concern comes up far too often, and that's our current lack of representation. For 4 years, our representation's been inaccessible, rarely responding to emails, phone calls, or reaching out to the community. Ward 10 deserves representation that is visible, accessible, willing to collaborate, and work together as a community. In 2018, I committed to stay involved with the community. I joined every committee and board that would have me. Today, I'm committing to be a full-time counselor and representative that is active in the community, communicates regularly, and embraces community feedback even when it's difficult. We can be better with authentic leadership, with active listening, and genuine, straightforward communication. I'm confident that we can achieve a better London. My name's Kevin May, and on October 24th, I hope to have earned your trust to represent you at City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go in order of the names that we drew. So the first question will be drawn by Michael McMullen. He will have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and then we will go through the rotation, which will be Paul Van Meerbergen second, John Kuipers third, and Kevin May fourth, and I'll rotate them through. So you pull a question, I'll read it out loud. Oh, you didn't. Councillors are elected by people in their ward to represent their interests, but City Council as a whole makes decisions that impact the entire city. On occasion, these interests may conflict with the priorities of your constituents. What do you see as the balance between representing your ward and the city as a whole?
Well, I think the first priority is to represent the people that voted for you, to represent your constituents, to actually have more engagement with the people of Ward 10 and discuss some of these issues. You know, do some polling, actually have a robust conversation, you know, actually enable democracy instead of making decisions for people that maybe they don't want. I mean, in some, you know, extreme situations, I can understand that sometimes some decisions have to be made that will affect other wards, but I think ultimately it's the voters that should have the say on what happens next. And I will stand behind the voters, and I will stand behind my constituents, and I will make sure that I keep my promises and my word. And, you know, we're going to see some real change here. And like some of my opponents here, you know, we all have different points of view and different ideas, and I think that's what's the most important thing here, is that we have our own opinions and we have our own ideas. Because we're not going to accomplish everything if everybody just follows the leader. Things are just going to get worse, and they are getting worse, and they're going to continue to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, you have 1 minute to respond.
Well, I certainly have a history of standing up for our constituents, standing up for our ward, and I've done so for many years. Now, the period of time between 14 and 18, I was not on council, so there were things that were set in play, like the London Plan, that I had nothing to do with. I did not support it, and I would not support it. At this current term that I'm on now, I voted against every budget, every single budget, and I've only voted for the budgets when they came in at zero, and we've had 2 of those in the last 15 years. So I'm just going to say very quickly, we had a situation on Kinnear Crescent just about a year ago where they unanimously did not want a new sidewalk. The London Plan was forcing a new sidewalk on this mature 50-year-old community. They were mostly retirees, well in their 70s and 80s, and I managed to stop construction of that sidewalk.
Thank you.
So it's an example of standing up for our ward. Thank you.
Okay, John?
Thank you. Realistically, in the way city government works, you have 15 councillors, including the mayor. 8 people have to agree and approve on anything. So on the one hand, I strongly believe in representing the interests of those who you represent. But at the same time, I'm aware that nothing can happen unless you can get 7 other people to agree with you. So ultimately, my bias is towards the city as a whole. It's the same thing as saying, well, would I favor my hand over my leg, or that kind of thinking. That we live as a part of the entire community, and therefore we need to look after the interests of the entire community. And I have 2 priorities that directly affect that. One, community-wide, I think we need to revitalize downtown, and there's been a lot of efforts that have failed. And the second thing is locally, our parks in Westmount are bare bones and very weak, and I hope I get a chance to talk more about that before the night's over.
Thanks.
Thank you. Kevin, your turn.
Thank you. Sorry. Not a tech guy. Yeah, so we all live in Ward 10. We love Ward 10. We chose this to live because of our ample spaces. But I work in Ward 14. I take my kids on bike rides to Ward 13. I spend a lot of time, my bus transfer every morning takes me in Ward 12. We're citizens of London. We absolutely need to be communicative and be speaking with our constituents and our community members. But as a whole, we need to worry about London as, thank you, as a whole, Because we are, the more growth, the more opportunities we can put in those other wards, the more taxpayer dollars, the lower our tax rates, the better our community overall. We're citizens of the city. We eat, we sleep, we entertain in different wards. We have family members in different wards. The city as a whole, we have to look the bigger vision, the bigger goal overall. But we need to do it as a community, and we need to work together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now it's Paul's turn to pull a question. Okay. And the question is, and Paul, you will start this one. What ways would you engage Indigenous communities in the City of London activities and strategic planning?
Well, thanks for the question. Obviously, the Indigenous peoples that live not only in London but in Canada are certainly deserving of our respect, and I think the vast majority of Canadians and Londoners do respect the Indigenous peoples because, of course, they're the ones who have settled this whole area first. I think the best way to bring them, Indigenous peoples, in with the greater society is through a strong economy and through employment. The best social program out there is a job, and I think most of us intuitively know that. It's clear that there's different agencies that are around which certainly help. I know the company I'm with, we work with an organization called No Kikwi, and we hire various Indigenous peoples who have been trained there, who bring with them some skills. And again, that's the way to bring harmony and cohesion and truly make us all equal. Thank you.
Thank you. John, it's your turn.
That's a tough question. I did a consulting gig for the Cree Nation in Chibougamau, Quebec. And when I was up there, I really had some insight into how the Indigenous community up there at least operated. And they operated as a separate, independent community with their own governance and so forth. And so the central question on this question is, do they want to be? It's really crucial. Like, it's the same with people trying to help homeless people. Do they want to not be homeless? Because it's hard to invite people into something if they don't want to be. If they do want to be, I think we have the means by which that can happen. And obviously, I think we've all become sensitized in the last 2 years to how important it is to make our Indigenous community feel like they are part of our country and that we are part of their world as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Strengthening our relationship with our Indigenous community and our neighbors is important to London's success. Working with our neighbors, Munsee Delaware Nation, Chippewa of the Thames Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, we must continue to grow that partnership. Over 10,000 Londoners identify as Indigenous. Studies have shown nearly 25% of our chronically homeless people identify as Indigenous. Systematic barriers remain. As barriers to employment, a recent Free Press survey suggested that systematic barriers and prejudice are still one of the main barriers to employment. The Truth Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action municipally to give a groundwork for what we can look at towards a path of reconciliation, committed to educating, celebrating Indigenous peoples, help by creating Indigenous business and cultural districts, encourage targeted recruiting for Indigenous people for employment, rename streets, landmarks, and traditional Indigenous names. Thank you. It's a long one.
Very good. Thank you. Michael, your turn.
It's definitely an interesting question, and it's something that's probably going to need more discussion to discuss. As a matter of fact, today I was talking to an Indigenous woman for about an hour, and the topic of the conversation had to do with wokeism and what's going on in the school systems. And and jobs and educations and opportunities. I think it's important that, I think it's cause and effect. We've had so many jobs fleeing this city over the past 20 years, tens of thousands of jobs, and the effect of that is more people living in poverty, more people losing their homes. Rent is skyrocketing. So I think creating opportunities for everybody, including Indigenous people, is very important, and it's something that we should be able to do in London. I don't think there's really any excuse. But some of the issues that matter to them is what I'm trying to dig down into and try to figure out. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be drawn by John. Cheers. Thank you. In 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada released a summary report of their findings and calls to action. Which of the calls to action do you believe the city should focus on moving forward in order to establish and maintain a mutually respectful relationship with Indigenous peoples?
Canada is a country of many ethnicities. I'm one of them myself. I remember as a teenager, Pierre Trudeau had a vision of a multicultural country. It was quite radical. I remember it appealed to me actually quite a bit, because when I was a kid, if you weren't a British background, you didn't really belong in this country. That was the feeling that I had. So I admired that approach, and I think his vision has come true. At one time, I was the head of the Toronto City Mission, and I began to understand poverty in Toronto, and I understood the Vindi communities. In St. Jamestown alone, there were over 100 different languages spoken in just one part of Toronto. So the Indigenous community has, I think, the historical position in our society as having been here first and having been a people with which we simply took the land. And that is the truth of what we've done. And now we have to say, how do we rectify that? And obviously governments have been trying to do this for more than 100 years. Even some of the terrible things of the residential schools were actually rooted in a well-intentioned goal, even though the execution was horrific once we saw how it was done. So we've struggled with this question, and I think we still struggle with it and how to do it. The best thing that I've seen is this truth and reconciliation, is this sense of acknowledging the lands on which we're standing. And I think we need to tear down any boundaries that are in the way that block people of that of Indigenous background, just as any other ethnicity in this country. If there are barriers based on race, creed, ethnicity, they need to be torn down, because the thing that I am myself a product of is the belief that it is talent, commitment, ambition, and that is what needs to happen, and is what has happened in, say, in the United States, that has made North American democracies as great as they are. Talent is what matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you for the question.
So the truth and reconciliation is groundbreaking. We have a long path to go. In my lifetime, I have seen, excuse me, thank you. I appreciate that, son. In my lifetime, we've seen, well, not my lifetime for the 60 scoop, but we have seen residential schools. We had the Dudley Georgianson in my 20 some odd years ago. We have a long way to go. So some of the low-hanging fruit, the easy things to do, they are important, and we've been doing them with the land acknowledgements, Orange Shirt Day. Those are important, but I'm going to tell you the list I was trying to tell you before, but really truly putting funds and resources into committing to education, to celebrating Indigenous peoples, creating Indigenous business districts and culture districts, encouraging the recruitment, renaming our streets, landmarks, and with traditional Indigenous names, promoting engagement with stronger voice in the community on council issues is a big one.
Thank you. Michael?
I think what's important is that we should be honoring our treaties and our obligations that we have made with the Aboriginal community going back 100 years. Respect their land rights and stop trying to encroach on them. I think we should show them as much respect as we possibly can and give them their due. And work together to build a stronger and better community for all of us. Put aside all this indifference and then try to fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will pull another. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Paul. My fault. Paul, it's your turn.
Well, when I read through these calls to action, there were two that kind of leapt off the page to me, and that was 13 and 17 that are listed. 13 is calling upon the federal government to acknowledge that Aboriginal rights include Aboriginal language rights. I think that's a given. I don't think any of us would want to have our language stripped away. So to me, that is fundamental. The next one was, we call upon all levels of government to enable residential school survivors and their families to reclaim names changed by the residential school system by waiving administrative costs for a period of 5 years for the name change process and the revision of official identity documents such as birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, health cards, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another one that leaps off the page. Imagine having your name stripped because of you're going into an institution that doesn't want you to have it. So these two, I think, are fundamental and should be addressed.
Okay, thank you. And Kevin, it's your turn to.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are over 40,000 students enrolled at Western University. Many leave after finishing their degrees. How do we work to attract and retain young talent after graduation?
Yeah, so like many young people, 20 some odd years ago, I left the city too. I found it was unaffordable. It didn't align with my values, and I had to go to another city for opportunities. Today, I fear that my 3 children are going to have to make the same decision, and I hope that we can make some changes so they can choose London to lay their roots. Back then, people were losing opportunities to the big cities, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and so on. Today, we're losing them to much smaller but more progressive cities. Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, Hamilton, they're all ahead of us as making their communities safer, more walkable, more inclusive, more accessible, more affordable for young people. Young people are far less likely to own their own vehicle, own a home, and are looking for cities that are allowing them to enjoy amenities, I always butcher that word, in an affordable way. This is affecting our ability to recruit, promote, and retain young talent. We can make London a more livable, welcoming city by building more housing, making it more affordable, increasing our active transportation to allow people to choose how they want to move around the city. Moving forward in infrastructure projects that will lower our operational costs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, I think like earlier in the conversation, we talked about attracting and retaining business in London. I think City Council needs to do a better job of getting businesses to come back to London. We have to ask ourselves, why do businesses want to leave London? Why do students leave London? Why is everybody, leaving as soon as they graduate from Western? So we need to do a really good job of bringing some of these jobs back, like Kellogg's or Caterpillar or GM or some of these manufacturing jobs that have left the country. We also need to show respect towards our students. I mean, one of the big things that is happening right now is with the vaccine mandates, right? Where Kitchener has dropped them, Guelph has dropped them, all the other universities, Fanshawe College has dropped them, everybody has dropped them, but not Western. And I think the Student Council needs to do a better job in, getting with the times. The pandemic's over, and if you want to retain people, then you don't force them to take something they don't want to take. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, firstly, I think a lot of students, and many of us have been there, don't really focus on the local community that they're in when they're attending school and going to class, and of course the ever-present parties. So I think it's incumbent on our community, certainly on City Hall and the municipal government, to show them, along with LEDC by the way, to show them what London has and how great a place it is to stay after you're finished and after you've graduated at Western or Fanshawe. So I think that is highly effective. And I also think we have to keep housing prices down so that they can afford a place to live after they graduate. That's key.
And then it'll be Michael's turn to, oh, sorry, John, go.
No problem. That's a question near and dear to my heart because I think, you know, as a person who's interviewed hundreds of people and hired dozens of top talent out of the best universities in the country, I've heard what they think, and I can think myself what I thought when I was in my 20s graduating. And what I'm thinking is two things, and what I think they're thinking is two things. One is my career opportunity here? Because if there's not a career opportunity here, they're going to go somewhere else. And the second thing, right closely behind it, I have a 26-year-old son, is am I going to have fun? Like my son is a sailor. He's not moving to London, I can assure you. We can't create a sailing location here, and that's okay. But there's a lot we can do to make this city a far more attractive place to live when it comes to parks and recreation, as an example.
Thank you. This will be the fifth and final question pulled from this box, and we will start with Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Oh, look at it.
The current City Council was the first in the country to add in a pillar to the city's strategic plan that specifically focused on making London a safer place for women and girls. How will you, as a City Councillor, work to ensure this important pillar is executed? With record numbers of femicides in Canada, what are the opportunities you see available to address gender-based violence by the City of London?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed in London is crime and violence is skyrocketing all over the city. And you read about it in the news every day in the London Free Press. You know, and again, it's back to cause and effect, right? So people lose their jobs, they don't have their jobs, they can't retain their jobs. Suddenly the next thing you know, their marriage is falling apart, they're having problems with their kids, they're getting addicted to drugs, and they're committing crimes. One of the other things that has happened in London is there has been a big closure in women's shelters, if everybody is aware of this. There's been a big closure, and I think that was a big mistake that was done by City Council, and I think that more effort should be put towards protecting these vulnerable women. One of the things that I would do is to make sure that these places were reopened and there was beds and places for women to go to if they are in need, and not leave them alone on the street. It's a big problem, and it's something that we're going to have to, as City Council and as the community, address together, and it's something that, as a community, we can probably fix together. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, I'm the father of four, three of which are young women. And of course, this is a concern to many families, many women. It's a concern to all of us. Oh, and I shouldn't leave out my little one-year-old granddaughter. So yeah, this is a problem for all of us. But I've spoken to my young ladies and to other ladies, and what they tell me is, you know, it doesn't have to be, certainly to take significant steps, it doesn't have to be complicated. Better lighting on the roadways, in the parks, and well-funded police that can actually respond in less than 24 hours when something happens. Unfortunately, now the wait is so long, it's so many people don't even bother phoning the police anymore. So we have to not defund the police, but refund them.
John?
I agree with a lot of what you said there, Paul. I think when you look at this issue, what you see is there's two ways in which women are vulnerable. One is in the outside world, and one is in their own home. The research that I've seen shows that 3/4 of the problem is in their own home. So if we look at the first part first, we have to see what can the city do. And the things Paul's mentioning, I agree with. We need better lighting and better policing, and I would add to that, we also need more people on the street as well. The second thing is inside the home, and inside the home can be a real prison. And so how do you deal with that? And one of them is that women who feel trapped by an abusive situation need a place to go, and that's where shelters come into play. The other piece of the puzzle that I strongly believe as a man is that other men need to be aware of and intervene when they see that some guy is losing control of what he needs to stay in control of.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you. So this is an important issue. And I just wanted, I'm not aware of what women's shelters have been closed in the last little while, and I would say that our police services, speaking with them, they are absolutely stretched by handling our mental health crisis and being called on calls that they're not trained to be doing. So I agree with you, we have to support our officers. We have to do it in a different way, and we have to do it by funding our social services. So I don't want to lose too much time here. Safe Cities and Public Spaces report indicated that women are far too often being harassed. Nearly 25% indicate that it's an ongoing experience. Local bars, public transit, schools finding unsafe for women. It's a great initiative built with 18 different community groups, women-led community groups, Inova, London Abuse, Women's Center, Safe Space. Problem is we have no budget for it, so it's a great initiative, but we, show me your budget and I'll show you your values. And also we have lots of women, especially during the pandemic, that are stuck at home with their abusers. Affordable housing is another option that we need to invest in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to move to questions that were submitted by audience members in advance to the Urban League. So I will start there. The order will be Paul, we'll start with you, then John can rebut, and then Kevin, then Michael, okay? The first question, and this is from Sharon D. What will make you a good counselor? So Paul, we'll start with you.
What would make me a good?
Yes.
First of all, it's understanding that people come from all different aspects and different points of view, and I certainly try very hard to listen and absorb what's being communicated, and I think that is tantamount to good decision making. Also, the background of the individual. Is it just been in public service? Has it just been in private sector? Has it been in both? I think, certainly in my situation, having years of experience in private sector and on the governmental side, that also helps in good decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
I think what will separate me as a counselor who can do a good job for you really comes from my experience as a senior executive. If there's anything I've learned in the years that I've been involved in managing large organizations is nothing gets done until you have a short list of big priorities. And what I see in the City of London is the opposite of that, where I see even today there's two of the main mayoral candidates who have like a list of 25 things they want to do. And when you match that against what's actually going on in council, 17 meetings a year, 4 hours each meeting, 3 hours of the 4 hours, in my opinion, wasted on things that it shouldn't be doing, you're left with 1 hour every 3 weeks in which to do something big. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So my goal will be to go in and alter and try to convince the other councillors to swing the way in which we do things so that a few big things can get done rather than lost in a sea of detail.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you for the question. What would make me a good counselor? I show up. I'm here to serve. I ran in 2018. I committed then to stay involved. As I said, I joined every committee that would have me. I was on the Environment Committee, the Child Care Committee. I chaired the Court of Revision for sewer systems, and I was on the Community Diversity and Inclusion Strategy for barriers to employment. I've worked in service my whole life. I come from a family of public servants. This is an important role, and we need to have somebody that is utilizing the service. I'm a regular transit user. I cycle everywhere I can. We walk. We we drive when we need to. My family and my kids. I worry about the future, and far too often in the city, we have refused to pay for the small pieces today, costing us far more in the future. And we have to have somebody with vision and somebody that is looking forward to move London forward and for a better city for all Londoners. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
First of all, I'm not a politician, so that's a plus right there. One of the things that I want to make sure is the people of London come first. You know, elderly's waiting for 2 years to get a surgery and then dying waiting for that surgery. I want to make sure that seniors come first. I want to make sure that our kids come first. We want to make sure that our children come first, the disabled come first, but mostly the people of Ward 10 come first. And there are so many issues that are plaguing Ward 10, and not only Ward 10, but the City of London. I mean, we've got drug addiction, poverty, homelessness. This stuff is skyrocketing out of control. So we're going to need somebody like me to get in there and to try to fix the problem, actually fix the problem, not talk about it, not talk about how wonderful I am or what buttons I wear or what initiatives I've done, but actually fix the problem and put the peoples of Ward 10 first.
Thank you. Second question, and this is from John H. And John, you'll start this answer, okay? If elected, what solutions will you bring with you to deal with unchecked racing and the use of altered, and in brackets loud, exhaust systems in our ward?
Yeah, we hear it every night, right, Diana? Right. Commissioners Road might as well be called the speed track. I mean, people are going 80, 90, 100. You can hear them. Where we live, it's a kilometer over to Wonderland, and you can still hear them loud and clear. The only solution I know of is policing. I mean, in those kinds of streets. And I don't see the policing. I don't see speed traps. I don't see tickets for noise that's too loud. Our own street, we live near Andover Drive, it too, people are going 70, 80 because of the traffic pressure, the inflow of all these cars. Andover Drive has become like another artery that's how do I quickly bypass the mess over on Wonderland. So we need some traffic calming measures. And that too, there have been some at the one end, and the residents there tell me they're not working. The little curves, it just makes the speeding even more fun for the drivers, not fun for the residents. So I think this is an issue that needs to be dealt with, and a lot of it is caused, I think the root of it is, again, in policing priority and making this a priority, including ticketing those who are breaking the law with these noisy mufflers and speeding, of course, which is, to say the least, dangerous, let alone frustrating.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you for the question. It's a good one. I've heard it multiple times at the doors. I've seen it while talking to people at the doors. And it's not just our major streets anymore. It's not just Southdale. It's not just Wonderland. It's not just Commissioners. These are coming down Viscount Road. We have them coming down Andover, Pine Valley, using them as cut-throughs. I would agree that we need to free up our officers and our police association to be able to concentrate on the role that they're trained to do. And that's an investment in social services, again, to prevent essentially, anytime that a police officer gets a call, no matter what it's for, he has a duty to help that person. So we want to support them with supportive services. We could look at speed cameras. We can, but ultimately, road design is a big one. Big wide roads mean people feel safer going faster. Traffic calming measures, especially in our residential streets. Looking at our residential speed rates, whether it's 40 or 30, lots of options. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't drive from one end of the city to the other end of the city without seeing 5 frickin' car accidents, excuse my French. The drivers are getting worse and worse and worse. People seem to be asleep at the wheel. It's not necessarily in the cul-de-sacs or the small roads like Farnham or stuff like that, but it's on the big streets that you were talking about, like on Commissioner's Road. It's pretty bad. So definitely something that needs to be done. I don't like to use the heavy hand approach. I try to get people to change their behavior through, maybe through talking to them, maybe to start with, or we can start the soft approach, and then if we have to get hard, then we'll get hard. But maybe just getting the word out and just getting the speed limits enforced, and we should be all right, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, this is certainly an issue that's near and dear to my heart. I find it just unbelievable. We don't live very far from Southdale, and we're right on Farnham. Farnham itself has 5,000 cars a day on it. Southdale, you maybe multiply that by 3. I pushed very hard to have Southdale widened, so thankfully we're seeing some fruits of that with the widening going as far as Southwest Optimus Park. Because in the end, what we need are fast arterials, like Southdale, and slow residential streets, like Farnham, Cranbrook, Andover, etc. It's interesting because my children, specifically my female children, when I said to them, I'm going to talk about the noise and the speed. Oh, Dad, you sound like an old guy. Don't bring that up. They'll just see you as an old guy. But no, I don't think so. I think this is transgenerational. We have to attack this. We have to deal with it properly. It's all over Canada. It's not just London.
Thank you. Okay, the next 2 questions are directed directly to Paul Van Meerbergen, and I'm going to combine one of them because they're kind of similar. Basically, in your current term, Paul, what are the things that you are most proud of that you have accomplished for Ward 10?
Well, I would suggest, certainly from my perspective and the perspective of a majority of people that I've spoken with, the widening of main roads. I managed to get Southdale Road in a previous term widened from Warncliffe over to Wonderland. I wanted to get it as far as Colonel Talbot. We managed to go as far, as I said, to Southwest Optimus Park. So that's certainly something that's way overdue. And frankly, I want to get the rest of it done as soon as possible. The staff are saying we can probably do it 2 years from now, and maybe even get it as far as Bowler, because that's going to take a lot of pressure off the internal streets of the residential areas. Also, Bradley is going to finally connect. I don't know, you probably realize there's gaps in Bradley. Now, Bradley's not in our ward, I realize that, but that will also take a lot of pressure off Southdale, and it's like a domino effect, and it'll relieve pressure within the residential street system. Over and above that, I've had several street meetings with various streets with various problems. As I mentioned, Kinnear had a real issue. They were really upset about having their front lawns torn up and having concrete ribbon of sidewalks through these beautiful homes that they have. I'm working now on a file, 604 Commissioners West. There's a beautiful old home that was put on the market, and then it was put up for development. A developer bought it. They want to put 95 apartment units on Commissioners Road at the corner of Westmount Crescent and Commissioners. 95. Now, yeah, we're going to have some infill, but let's do it in a reasonable, sane way, not like that. With 6 stories going up, and these people that have lived there their whole lives are going to stare at this day after day with a parking garage behind it? No, I don't think so. So we've pushed back on that. That's gone back for redesign. I can go on and on. There's different things that I've done.
Thank you.
And very proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And this last write-in question is directed to Paul, and this is from Walt G. Can you assure the voters that there will not be a repeat of the debacle that you were embroiled in during the last election?
Okay, by that I think he means what happened with a campaign worker. Any of us sitting here right now could have a campaign worker go off and do something without the candidate knowing about it. This was thoroughly investigated. It was shown to be nothing there. It was a nothing burger, and that's why you haven't heard anything in the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we do have time for audience questions. So, oh my goodness, here we go. That's always what I'm looking forward to. Okay, if you can, yeah, 1 minute for responses because we have to keep it short. Thank you, Sue. When I call you, please identify yourself, say your name, and then ask your question. I'll try to come to you. I'm not sure how far this will go.
Well, I can speak loud enough.
Thank you.
At least public speaking. My name is Norman Steele, and my question is, I saw a report the other night that the average price of a one-bedroom apartment in London is at $1,743. It's higher than some parts of the GTA, Hamilton, Kitchener, Waterloo. So you talk about affordability. Now, there's been the rise in interest rates that haven't helped that at all. But I think there's a core issue. There isn't enough affordable housing. Now, why all of a sudden this has kind of risen to the surface? Where is the pre-planning that should have been going on, knowing that there was going to be increase somewhat of the population of London? What are we going to do about it?
Thank you. And we'll start with Kevin.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a great question. Exactly. As a renter myself, I feel the pain. If I were to move out of my townhouse right now, my rent would go up over $1,000. We are seeing unprecedented. This weighs on. This is partially why we're losing young people. I have young staff members that have to take 3 buses to get to work because it's the only affordable option. They don't want to look anywhere else because the rent will be through unaffordable. This is why we have full-time workers, people working full-time. We've always had a little bit, but unprecedented amount of people that work full-time that are experiencing homelessness right now because they can't afford rent in this city. We need to be innovative. We need to look for appropriate multi-zoning issues, such as of right zoning, co-ops, communities that are walkable, and rent geared to housing. And we need to look at that missing middle that exists right now. We need to build. We need to utilize and prevent unnecessary delays.
Thank you.
Rent evictions.
Sure. Okay. Michael?
Yeah, what a great question. Affordable housing is a major problem in London, and the thing that kind of disturbs me the most is the government's lack of foresight. So they're saying we're gonna bring in all these people, we're gonna do all these things, we're gonna wear colored shirts, we're gonna do whatever, but at the end of the day, people don't have a place to live. So I think there has to be a balance between bringing jobs to London, creating jobs, and retaining jobs here in London, and between City Council and providing subsidies to help people that are in need of this stuff. Now, I know landlords can only increase their rent by, 2.1%, I think it is, per year? Something like that, unless, of course, they evict the tenant and then they can drive the price up. So maybe more controls need to be put on the landlords in London to make sure that people, are getting a fair shake. I mean, I was a landlord myself, so I understand it.
Thank you. We have to stop that there.
We'll talk about it more afterwards. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, no, it's Paul's turn and then yours, John.
Sorry, Paul, I got ahead of you.
That's okay. I do that all the time.
Yeah, I think the gentleman's question, and thank you very much for it, is geared towards how do we get more housing stock on the market so that we can all pay a lower price for our housing needs. And the best way we can do that is we have to streamline and trim red tape. There's so much red tape in the planning department at City Hall, and no offense to those guys, they're very conscientious, but the fact is the systems are old. We need to revamp them. They have to put this stuff out the door faster, and this is a problem across the province of Ontario. That's why the provincial government has come out with a document called More Homes for Everyone, basically saying the same thing, that all the municipalities have to streamline and get these plans and approvals out the door quicker.
Just a quick reaction to that, Paul. It's like, is that new news? People have been complaining about that for a long, long time, and clearly it hasn't been addressed. I think the biggest thing when you're the city, we have to live with certain ripple effects. The policy of the Trudeau government to put interest rates at 0.25% completely caused the housing market to go crazy. It was a really bad policy, and we, the city, are left with the ripple effect of that. Housing prices go through the roof. Obviously, then the cost of living in a place goes up, and that ripples right into rent. And that happened all with blinding speed. So really what the city needed to do was to be very on top of their game at something that literally is like a tidal wave, like a tsunami that hit the City of London, as we included 40,000 new residents in the last 4 years. I think the answers we all know: more supply, some rent control, of course, and hopefully with this rise in interest rates, some sanity returns to the housing market, including the reduction of rents.
Thank you. Another audience question? The woman here in the white blouse, yes. Oh, can you stand up, please?
I do have a question. Everybody has made great promises about how you're going to fix the housing, but nobody has specifically said what policies you're going to change. It's great to make promises, but how are you going to make those changes?
Thank you. And we'll start with Michael.
Yeah, I think as a new city councillor, I do have a little bit to learn about policies that have been put forward by London City Council. So I think if I was elected as your city councillor, one of the first things I would do is to go through all these policies with a fine-tooth comb and figure out what's good and what's bad, and then work with the community to try to improve things for everybody. I mean, I can't say that I know everything, and I'm not going to say that to anybody, because, you know, as a new city councillor, I will have a little bit to learn. But I can tell you my heart's in the right place, and I want to make sure that everybody in Ward 10 gets a fair shake.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, as I said, I mean, I've seen this year after year where plans come forward and developers and builders are almost unanimously complaining that why is it taking so long? Why are their feet dragging? Why can't we get these things approved? I mean, so much of that is in the red tape realm, and we've just got to streamline this to get these things out. Now, that being said, I'm also concerned about having just apartment buildings. We still need single-family homes because there are many people that want to raise their children in a single-family home or a townhouse, and not necessarily in a 15 or 18-story apartment building. So there has to be balance there as well. But fundamentally, it's getting the approvals done in a timely manner.
John?
Once again, it just seems to me that the answer is clear. We live in a free enterprise society. Supply and demand is what drives the markets. Right now, in the last while, we've had inadequate supply. Demand has gone through the roof. Prices go through the roof. So what do you do about that? The kinds of things Paul's talking about make sense, but it begs the question, this isn't new news. We've been dealing with this for years, decades. The complaints that I've heard, my father was a builder as well as a farmer, dealing with planning departments. Why does it take months in order to get the development we need? That is really the issue. And in this particular case, we needed to have acted quickly, and we have not done so. So some of the issues, I think, is also some competing visions on what kind of housing stock we should have. Paul referenced that as well. Apartments, townhouses, homes. Not everybody wants to live in a high-rise, so we have to be able to enable all of that. And that, at the end of the day, comes down to priorities. Does this council have their eye on the ball to get it done? If not, nothing happens.
Thank you. We got time for a couple more questions, perhaps.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm
all
sorry.
good.
See there, I did it again. My fault. Kevin?
It's all good. Hi. I hope I can answer a question, to be honest. No, you're absolutely right. So there's a few pieces to this. So what we're missing here is that as of 2018, anything built after November of 2018, quite honestly, your landlord can raise your rent to whatever the heck they want. So we have to advocate to the province to start working on that to make things more affordable for people. I like the Indwell model as well. There are nonprofits that I've spoken with, like Indwell, that are dealing with the Embassy Hotel and the hospital in Soho. And they're finding that working with the City of London, compared to other municipalities like St. Thomas, they're doing innovative things in St. Thomas. So they have projects right now where they have the ground broken, but they don't own the land yet. So we're, streamlining that stuff, absolutely. And looking at areas where we have these big properties on these pre-war homes where we can fit a 2 or 3 story kind of multi-residential unit and acting there. Renovictions are a big thing as well right now. What traditionally would have been our affordable housing is now becoming renovations.
Thank you. Lots of questions. So, no, sorry. You can talk after, okay? There'll be plenty of time. We'll go to this woman here, okay? Can you state your name and your question, please?
Mr. Van Calhoun, I'd like to address this specifically to Mr. Van Meerberg, because I think he's the only one that can answer it. I'm curious about why. Sorry, I'm curious as to why we've been talking about great things tonight and all the things that need to be done and all the money that has been and needs to be spent. I'd like to know why we're getting a dog kennel in Westmount Mall. Last I heard, that was a medical and educational mall. How did that happen? I know you voted for it. I want to know why, when we need to be spending money in other places like Housing for Humans. I don't understand that, sir.
Thank you.
Could I maybe get could you rephrase it for me? I couldn't quite hear it.
Okay, she is asking about the dog kennel that is going in at Westmount Mall.
Okay.
Why did you support that instead of something else?
Well, okay. Okay, thanks for the question. So that's a private sector investment that really has nothing to do with the local government. We didn't put a dime into it. It's called Dogtopia. It's an American chain. They have 200 stores. They're stores, just like the government doesn't have anything to do with that. That's a private sector matter. Westmount Mall is trying mightily to reinvent itself. Westmount, of course, is a private sector operation. They have some institutional tenants. I think most of those are on the top floor, but they're also trying to broaden out with private sector tenants. They have to reinvent themselves. Far better to do that and have a functioning, vital mall with a variety of services than to have it laid dormant and have nobody in there and just have it shuttered and then maybe torn down someday so that we could put more 18-story apartment buildings there. It's doing a wonderful job at reinventing itself, and the Dogtopia franchise is just one thing that's in there, but it has nothing to do with the government or the local government.
Thank you. Okay, we've probably got time for one more question. The gentleman in the blue shirt.
My name's Eric Speller. I live in Ward 10. This question is for all the candidates. You've mentioned about the London plan, which has been very extensive in this part of the city. I'm sure all of us in here have dealt with building that's going on in this area. It's extensive. However, in the middle of these plans, the casino suddenly appeared on one of the main roads. And supposedly, according to the London plan, one of the policies contained in the London plan is that anybody that lives within 120 metres or 130 yards of the old terminal is supposed to be advised that this is going to be rezoned, and they have a chance to come out and express any difficulties they have with that. However, 130 yards of where the casino was going to be put in, there wasn't one residential home within 130 yards. So nobody in the residential area knew that that was going to be relocated until it turned up on CTV News. Wards 9, 10, and 11 put together a hasty meeting in order to address some of the concerns that people around the thing here were concerned about. They did not want the casino to come here. Now, two parts to this question. One, we know it's been held up, and Paul, you have whether I do this and anyone else. Is the casino still planning to come into the city? And two, the policy about advising residents so they can turn up at meetings to express their concerns when no resident lives within 130 yards of where the casino can be put in. Those types of policies need to be looked at. It may sound trivial, but not to people who don't want the casino.
Thank you. And this question, we will start with Paul, and then we'll go to John, and then Kevin, and then Michael.
Yeah, so that's a standing policy that the planning department has, is that they send out notifications if you're within a certain distance. I think, yeah, you're right, 120 meters, I think it is. I do think that in cases like that, where you've got a large building coming into play, that should be extended. I wasn't actually aware that it didn't go out into that community, but the fact is there were a few people that did not want that casino, but there was still a lot that wanted it, especially when it came out about how beautiful that building was going to be, with 4 beautiful restaurants and world-class entertainment right here in Ward 10. A lot of people were looking forward to that. It was far more than just the actual gambling aspect to it. But sadly, COVID hit. COVID changed so many things, including that development. So it looks like it's not going ahead. It's going to stay at Western Fair. So that's where it stands.
Thank you. John?
I nearly fell off my chair when I saw that they were going to move the casino to Wonderland Road. To me, it's an example again of a city council that has completely lost its way. You were going to put in thousands of more cars on already the busiest road in London that's serviced by a beautiful 2-lane road out to the 402 and the 401. What kind of catastrophe were we about to invite into the neighborhood? Wow. So I was extremely grateful to see that they're going to stay where they are. For myself, I believe that we actually have an opportunity with that casino, and I'd like to talk more, well, I have 30 seconds left, that I think we can solve our downtown problem by moving the casino downtown. And the reason that will work is that the downtown needs people. Toronto did it. They moved all their sports stadiums downtown. That resulted in lots of services, and then what followed? People. Downtown Toronto is now a safe, busy, fun place to be. Downtown London, the opposite.
Kevin?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, absolutely. It made sense to nobody why we'd put a casino in that area when we have development going on in the Western Fair District. And quite honestly, we'll see what happens with the business that ended up closing in NJ Spivak that was at that location. But you hit upon something that, well, there's a couple things. First of all, this is what I'm saying about councillors being active in the community and communicating with our community members. Any of these major changes should be discussed as a community. And this is what you get when you have an active counselor, somebody that is coming to you. It's not up to you to find out on the news. It's up for us to reach out to you with regular town hall meetings, with regular check-ins, answering emails and phone calls. And also, we also find that renters are often overlooked in this area. When we were talking about the widening of Wonderland Road, I live on Wonderland Road. No notification. My mother lives 4 blocks away from Wonderland Road. She gets a notification. We need to include all Londoners when we're talking about a better London. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, I can tell you one thing. Nobody I talked to wanted a casino in Ward 10. There might have been some people that wanted it, but the people that live here didn't want it because they knew that a casino would just bring up more traffic, more crime, more drugs, more all kinds of stuff, more road congestion. And the people that live here want to live in peace. They don't want to live with a big casino right beside their house. So personally, I'd be against it, but if somebody can give me reasons for it, I would be more than happy to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, because we are almost near the end of the evening, we do want to give each candidate a minute, so 60 seconds, to wrap up. And what we'll do is go back to the original order that we started with. So the first person is Michael, then we'll go to Paul, and then John, and then Kevin.
First of all, thank you all for coming here tonight and listening to this, this great debate between the ward candidates. Like I said, I am not a politician, and I'm not looking to gain any type of political favors. What I want to do is just do what's best for Ward 10 and the people that live in Ward 10. I didn't come here with a big booklet of notes, flipping through it to try to answer all the questions. I decided the best thing to do was to answer the questions from my heart, from the best of my knowledge, and I think that was the best approach for me. And I hope that when the election comes, that London West gets the right candidate that does the right job. Thanks to the facilitators and the timekeepers, and I'd like to thank the school and the media for coming, and thanks to all the other candidates for coming out. You guys did a terrific job, and I look forward to our next discussion.
Paul?
Well, I want to say thank you again to the organizers, to all of you, to the candidates. It certainly was a healthy exercise in democracy. I think that's a good way to maybe sum it up. I do want to say, when I was elected back in 2018, I held a ward meeting at Westmount Mall at the end of June 2019. And then sadly, COVID hit, and that interrupted a lot of the live get-togethers. But I still was able to hold several street meetings and carry on regardless, carrying on with various issues important in the ward at the street level. Now that COVID is more or less at bay, I think it remains to be seen what happens this fall. I look forward to hosting more and regular ward meetings because I find they're truly productive. But again, I don't want to use COVID as a complete crutch, but we all know what happened, and that's just the reality of it. And thanks again.
John?
So I'm running for city council because I have the time, the energy, and the experience to do a good job for you. And one of the things as a marketer, I always start with what does the customer need? And what I've seen and believe is that every citizen deserves three things and expect and want that from the city. And they are plumbing, pleasure, and pride. All three of those things. So plumbing is food, housing, transportation, safety. That's the core job. That's what we have to keep our eye on, that ball. But the other two matter as well. Pleasure, parks and rec. That's how you attract young talent to stay in this city. There's something exciting to do when you live here. Our parks in Westmount, and in general, we spend 1/3 less per capita in London than every other major city from Windsor to Toronto. I don't know why. The third thing is pride. And I think the thing that I'm picking up, because there's a lot to be proud of in London, is downtown. City has tried and they've failed. And we need a whole new way to solve the downtown problem. So on October 24th, please vote for change.
And finally, Kevin, thank you.
Thank you again, Kathy. So we have an important decision in this election. We have the opportunity to decide whether we as a community are going to go where we're going in the next 10 years. Are we going to take advantage of all the opportunities that London has in this great place? Are we leaving our future generations a resilient, sustainable, affordable city? Are we going to make bold decisions today to lower our costs in the future? I've talked about where we're going with major investments, economic recovery, affordability, our transit system, housing infrastructure. So we have to look back. I want to look back in 5 to 10 years and say, we did these amazing things in London, and we can. But it's going to take bold decision-making, working as a community, and growing and strengthening and creating opportunities for everyone in London, Ontario. Thank you all for being here today. It's extremely important. I'm happy to chat anytime afterwards or at your doorstep. You can see more at kevinmayward10.ca, October 24th. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of the candidates, not only for running for office, but for working so well this evening. This was wonderful. Thank you also for the audience for participating today and, participating in the democratic process. Thank you so much. And don't forget to vote on Monday, October 24th. There were a couple of questions earlier. The only mayoral debate that I am aware of is the one being run by the Chamber of Commerce. So if you can check their website, the date and the information is there. Are there any other school board trustees? Okay, so Sherry Moore and Beth Mai. Okay, so they are also here. So now we have 3 school board trustees, so you can talk to them as well. Thank you so much for coming out. Feel free to talk to the candidates. Our volunteers will start picking up the chairs, but ignore them while we go through that process. Thank you all so much. Stay safe. Have a good night.
Call the Rogers TV Viewer Response Line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday Tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon, all season long. Follow your favorite teams and players live in HD. Order NFL Sunday Ticket and get up to 200 regular season games. Call your local service provider today. Night's action on Rogers TV.
Most people that have received treatment for drug use problems are probably going to have a lapse.
Join addictions counselor Dean Anderson for Invisible, Breaking Through the Stigma of Addiction on Rogers TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will endeavor to describe the feeling on this ship. The American ship is just trailing the Blue Nose.
Angus should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old.
Eddie! Coming in there! The cops are hell your back! Get to it, man!
Appears there's some kind of difficulty.
There seems to be something loose up there, I believe. The console's foul! Can't see a man!
Just once more, little girl, and you can rest.
Her last race and still undefeated. The Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
Do you want to play for KW Braves or Team Canada?
Team Canada.
When you play, who's your coach?
You.
Do you guys like having me as your coach?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
If I come sit, do you think we can answer their questions just like you guys just did for me? Because you guys did a really good job. We have to do our interview first, then we can go play lacrosse. How about that?
Turn our listening ears on. Ready? Oh, they're on. Okay, we're ready.
Lacrosse is one of those things where it's always meant a lot to me, and my family really supported me growing up, but it's been really cool to share this experience with my family and my kids.
Putting that jersey on the first time was extra special. It took an extra second to look at what I was doing and think back and think of the people who helped me get there, especially my wife, who was home with these guys while I was off chasing lacrosse. So for everybody to be here, it's been extra special.
My son loves the game, and he loves watching, and my daughter, hopefully the same thing. She'll love to come out and watch and support, and then I get to coach and I get to be a part of it as well.
What's your favorite part about this trip?
Winning all the games, going to new places,
What about you, Ben?
winning games.
Seeing how happy he is when he comes out and watches the games.
I know you want to play
How
lacrosse.
excited he is to go play lacrosse, even watching guys throw the ball off the wall. It's something that I think he's very passionate about, and that's definitely something that I feel that's rubbed off.
I was always, encouraged and motivated to have fun. My dad didn't play lacrosse, so when I'd get in the car after the game, he would just ask, do you have fun? And he didn't know any better to say what I did wrong. It always, motivated me, and I enjoyed going to lacrosse. So I know as a dad now, I'm just going to always focus on making sure they're enjoying whatever they're doing. So it's important for me to make sure, whatever they're doing, it's fun for them. That's nice, Benny.
Something I've learned in lacrosse is hard work. I think everybody is here in this position because they've been the hardest working players in all of their collective teams, and something I'd pass along to them is your dreams can come true as long as you put the time and the effort in. Wearing the Maple Leaf, it's something that's a big honor. It's something I'm very humbled to do, and I hope that they can look back on this. I know how special it was to me to share that with them.
This is the first time I've been able to play for Team Canada, and it came a little bit later in my career. If it happened earlier, these guys might not be around, so the fact that it came a little bit later made it extra special that my family's here. It's great that my family can share this with me.
Who's daddy?
Maddie.
Maddie Beers, right? What number is he?
2.
Number 2. And what do we say when daddy's on the floor?
Oh, Canada, go.
Go, Canada, go.
Love you, buddy.
Does my equipment make me look like a superhero, Ben?
No.
No. Good answer.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon, all season long. Follow your favorite teams and players live in HD. Order NFL Sunday Ticket and get up to 200 regular season games. Call your local service provider today.
Rogers TV has given me the opportunity to be involved within my local community, where I have met plenty of new people, experienced new things. I have done various production roles such as graphics, live audio, and camera work. Recently, I have been a part of the London Knights Rogers TV crew, and I have had a wonderful time there, being part of such an amazing and diverse group of individuals. I highly recommend it.
It's about sharing and caring. It's about doing and belonging. It's about living life to its fullest. And it's about laughing out loud. We are L'Arche Canada, and we're about witnessing and sharing the gifts of all people. Learn more about us today.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose